The next thing we'll be looking at in the pre-colonial political administration of the Hausa land is the legislative functions. How did they go about their making laws? Who made the laws? Who made the laws? What was the things that were put in place when making laws? The first and the most important thing that I want every one of us to remember in this class today is that the Hausas in the pre-colonial time majorly were using the Islamic, or what we call the Sharia law. Every law in Hausa land was based on the Islamic law or the Sharia laws. The Islamic law was the supreme law of the Emirates. Anything not related to Islamic law was not used in matters where the Islamic law had a say, but in matters that were not covered by the Islamic laws, because the Islamic laws mainly covered civil matters, issues that were relating to civil issues was what the Islamic law covered. So issues that were not covered by the Islamic law, the emir had the capacity to make laws on matters as such, on matters that are not covered by Islamic laws. So Islamic law was the supreme law in the pre-colonial Hausa times, only in situations that the Islamic law, only in situations where Islamic law does not have a say on that issue, on that matter. That is when the emir would have the capacity to make laws on such issues. And such laws was on issues such as land or criminal acts that were not probably covered in the Islamic laws. The next thing we'll be looking at is how executive functions were carried out in the pre-colonial Hausa pre-colonial political administration. The next thing we'll be looking at is the executive functions, is how the Hausas in the pre-colonial times carried out their executive functions. The emir was in charge of making policies, enforcing them, maintaining law and order in the Emirates. So it was the emir that was in charge of making the policies, enforcing the policies, and maintaining law and order in the Emirates. So the emir was the one in charge of the executive functions. The emir was also authoritarian and he had absolute powers. You would recall that we said the emir had a number of special advisors, but these special advisors do not have final say on any issues. The emir could choose to ignore or accept the advice of the special advisors. The next thing we'll be looking at is the judiciary functions. The judiciary function was based on Sharia laws. So we said that the legislative functions, every law made in the Hausa land was based on the Islamic or the Sharia law. So the punishment was also based on the Islamic laws or the Sharia laws. So the judiciary administration was based on Sharia laws. These laws were administered by people we call the Al-Khali judges. The Al-Khali judges. So the Al-Khali judges were the one in charge of pronouncing punishments for offenders, and these punishments were based on the Sharia law. At times, cases that were not too serious, cases that were probably involving that were not too serious, or they were not considered as something that should be taken to the court, or something that the Al-Khali judges would have to meditate, or something that was not necessary for the Al-Khali judges to be involved in. These minor cases were passed to the village heads, and they were usually settled by the village heads. Criminal and land cases were usually referred to the emirs because Sharia laws dealt mainly with civil cases. I already said this earlier when we looked at the legislative functions. So criminal and land cases which are not covered in the Sharia law was referred to the emir, and the emir had capacity to make laws on issues as such. The next thing we'll be looking at in the pre-colonial political administration of the Hausa land is the type of administration. And the type of administration back in the pre-colonial Hausa times was a highly centralized administration. The emirate was a highly centralized one. There was no clear separation or division of power. We said earlier that the emir had special advisors, and that he could choose to accept or ignore the advice of the special advisor, even the waziri did not have a say. He could only say, yes, sir, this is how it should be. The emir could say, no, I don't want it like that. Yes, I want it to be like that. He had absolute power. There was no separation of power. There was no clear division of power. The emir possessed almost all the powers. Another thing about the administration, the pre-colonial administration of the Hausas, is that there was no clear system to check the excesses of the emir. There was no system of check and balance. There was nothing in place to check the excesses of the power of the emir. So the emir could do as he wished, regardless of the feelings of the people, regardless of if what he was doing is right or wrong. He had absolute power, and nobody could check the excesses of the power of the emir. The emir was also an authoritative leader.